Sikkim 365 and Baylor Plus have teamed up to bring Baylor fans the ultimate content bundle. You can sign up now for $17.99 a month, a $5 monthly savings, and get instant access to all premium content on both websites. For more information, visit either sikkim365.com or baylorplus.com today. What's up, Baylor family? Welcome into Inside Baylor Sports, the official daily podcast of Baylor Athletics. It's Friday, September 27th, and in just a little while, I will be joined by Baylor special teams coach Mark Scott. But first, I'm excited to welcome in Baylor football PA announcer Derek Smith. You'll definitely recognize his voice from McLean Stadium on Saturdays in the fall, but Derek also hosts the post-game fan forum with Elliott Coffey after every single Baylor football game during the season. So make sure you tune into that. But Derek, it's great to have you on today.
Hey, Colt, it's great to be with you. Excited to talk a little Baylor football. We got a big game this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, you set up each game and you just think, man, like this one could be the big one. This one, maybe they gain some momentum from this one, but this one truly is kind of, I don't want to call it a make or break for the season, but you got 6 home games on the schedule this year, not 8 like you did last year. You have 6 of them against a team you're favored against right now. I think the line's around 3 or 3.5, and BYU looks pretty good, but you got to get these at home at this point.
Yeah, you really do. And you're right. You know, it's not that if Baylor doesn't win that all is lost, but the path to your goals, you know, starting with 6 wins and anything beyond that is so much easier if you protect your home field. And it's so much easier. Really, this game's just a swing game because you're coming off that heartbreaking loss on the Saturday, which, you know, I think for all of us was just an all-time gut wrencher. And you want to get that taste out of your mouth quickly. And, you know, really no better way to do it than to beat a top 25 team in a Big 12 game. And, you know, I think there's a chance to kind of curb whatever momentum you have from last week, you can curb that and hopefully try to build some positive momentum as you head into October.
Yeah, so we're a third of the way through the season. I think we're starting to see a full picture of what this team is, but at the same time, like it's not in focus. I don't know if that analogy makes sense, but it's just kind of like we see it all. It's all there, but is it getting put together? Like what's really, where is this team headed? We just don't know yet. That's how I feel. And I don't know if you feel the same way or not.
Well, yeah, it's funny because it feels like the new season, but this is going to be the 5th game. You know, a little over a week from now, we'll be halfway through the season, which is crazy. And I think to the point you're making is, you know, there's still groups that I don't know that they've hit their full potential. I mean, you look at the offense, you know, Sawyer Robertson will be making his 3rd start of the season. And, you know, he's a talented player, but he's a young guy. I don't know that we've seen what all he can do. You know, even when he started last year, you know, a lot of the time he was out there after that Utah game, he wasn't at full strength because he got hurt in the Utah game. So what could he be when he's in his 10th or 11th start and really in more of a groove? You know, that's one question I have. And then what is coming into focus, I think, is I do think the defense is good. There's a good defense. I know that some of the numbers didn't end up being great against Colorado, but I really thought they played a solid game on the road, you know, particularly for about 59 minutes and 58 seconds, unfortunately, but they did some positive thneed that you can build on. And special teams, you know, you heard you talking about having the special teams coach on that's been a strength. I mean, obviously on the road, if you can steal 7 points somewhere, that's great. Baylor did that with the Bell kickoff return, and you know, whether it's Josh Cameron on punt returns, Palmer Williams punting, that's been an area that I think going forward you kind of have a lot of confidence in as you look to what's ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hidden yardage game in a lot of ways when you're playing so many one-possession games, and we've already seen one this year, right? With the overtime game, there were so many last year. Even you look back to the 22 and the 21 seasons, there was a lot of them there. They're just reality in the Big 12, and to this point of it, kind of you mentioned it, kind of still being a new season when you've played 4 games, but you've had 2 different starting quarterbacks for 2 of those games. You didn't have your starting running backs essentially with Dominic Richardson and Bryson Washington available for the first few games. You've faced so many different offensive schemes. And honestly, we haven't seen this team tested at home. So how are they going to respond at home? We don't know any of those things right now. Obviously, they're 2-0 at home, but at Tarleton and Air Force, you just don't. Obviously, you don't want to take those games or potential wins for granted, but you need to win those no matter what. And they took care of business in those. So with that, we've seen Sawyer for 2 games, DeQuan for 2 games. And I think that we just have to ask this, right? But Dave Aranda mentioned that on Monday, it's like he expects Sawyer to get better with every start. And I don't want to read much into it, but it kind of seems like that's where this is going. It seems like this is Sawyer's team until he shows that he's not capable of reaching the potential, or maybe he just starts where he's not protecting the football as well as he has been. Do you kind of see it that same way?
That's how I heard it when in his press conference on Monday. That's how I heard it when Coach Aranda was talking about the quarterback situation. And I think, what you've seen from Sawyer bears out why it looks like that's the direction we're going. Not this solid game against Air Force that probably the numbers would have been even better had it not been for all those first half fumbles.
Yeah.
And then against Colorado, I think at times it was an up and down game, but you saw why this team liked him, why he can run this offense, whether it was that touchdown run on 4th down. He showed a nifty running ability. He's not going to be a guy like DeQuan Finn or guys we've had in the past, certainly RG3 who could just, run all around behind the line of scrimmage and make a play or take off and get by some guy as easily. But he's got an ability to extend plays. He's kind of deft running the football, and he can throw it well. He's got that ability. I think that touchdown pass to Hal Presley was probably one of the better combinations of great pass in clutch moment that we've seen, probably maybe going back to the 2021 Big 12 season. I know it didn't result in a win, but man, that was a big time pass. Hal Presley only needed one hand to catch it, because he was being held. And that gave Baylor a lead that they were in great position to hold. And I think that's what you want to see too. The moment wasn't too big for him. Even in overtime, they're at the cup of the goal line after the heartbreak of the Hail Mary. And so I think what we've seen from him is a solid passing ability that can get better. He can run the football, and it seems like he's got that poise that you want.
Yeah, I mean, in that game against Colorado, I think he probably had, truthfully, 5 throws. The one miss to Ashton Hawkins it's a catchable ball, but a difficult pass to catch. But 4 throws that really stood out. Obviously, the one to Monterey Baldwin was terrific. A great catch there. A play that you want to see Ashton Hawkins make a similar play. Like, go make a great play on that ball and give yourself a chance. But then there's a back shoulder to Hal Presley early in the game, a jump ball on the sideline to catch Ron Jackson. So he made multiple throws in that game that make you say, okay, there's something to this. I think Colorado really forced him to get the ball downfield. There wasn't anything easy short. So his completion percentage suffered a little bit, but there was some confidence to that. And I think even though, like you said, with the loss, you gain confidence of saying there's some passing ability here that DeQuan's strengths are not that. It's not pocket passing. It's not making quick reads and getting the ball out. And what Sawyer's done is that running the football is still available with him. He can still do it. It's not the same way. So DeQuan's strengths are not missed nearly as much when he's not in there. So I think Sawyer's done a great job of getting himself into position to be the starter. And now you want to see them grow on that, because I still don't. I mean, we're 4 games into a new offensive scheme. It's not where the potential is still there for this offense to grow.
For sure. And, Sawyer was a big time passer in Texas high school football in Lubbock. And obviously he was recruited to Mississippi State. I think the potential, again, like, we're only 6 starts into his college career, and a lot of those he wasn't full strength. So my hope is that the Sawyer Robertson we see at the end of the year is even better than the one that we're seeing now, and that it allows Jake Spavital to open up even more of the playbook with these guys. And DeQuan Finn, we've seen historically in college football, we're probably going to need him again at some point. And, you never want to see a quarterback get injured, but, historically we might need him in a big moment. And you hope that he's putting in that work, because he's putting in the work, and you hope he's just ready for that moment if it comes, because he's a talented guy who does bring some strengths. But what's encouraging about Robertson too is, you mentioned that running game. You want opposing defensive coordinators have to at least account for the fact that he can run. And Sawyer has shown that they do have to account for that.
Yeah, on multiple occasions. In the Colorado game, I would say a little bit in Air Force, obviously scoring the rushing touchdown in that game. And going back to last year, if you look at the West Virginia game to end the year last year, obviously a different offensive scheme. He played well in that game. He moved around the pocket well, made throws on the run. So like there's a precedent for him being able to use his legs. I mean, if you go back to the game against Utah at the beginning of last year, before his ankle injury, in that game, he was running the ball well. And so he's athletic enough and he's big. He's 6'4", 220 pounds. And defensive coordinators are absolutely going to have to account for him. So with all of that, I want to turn kind of to the concerns still. 4 games, you're 2-2. Obviously, there are flaws with this team. I think the Utah game, in a way, kind of showed you some flaws, but I don't know if there's anything that's just overly concerning other than you just need the offense to continue to grow, because it seems like the defense is settled in. They should continue to get better under Dave Aranda. But what are your biggest concerns on both sides of the ball as you go into a game against BYU and then obviously Iowa State on the road and Texas Tech on the road?
You know, one overriding thought for me, and maybe this is just so obvious, but obviously you got to win. And I think one thing you want to see this team do, you know, they had the comeback against UCF last year and they held on, you know, they were able to hold on and get the win against Cincinnati. But winning close games and just that confidence going into the late moments that you can close a game out, that you can hold off a good team, or that you can come back against a good team. Obviously, those 2021 Bears had it on the way to a Big 12 championship. We saw some tight wins in 2022, but I think you think back to some of these games, Colorado. I'd even call, you know, the loss against Utah ultimately was something of a close loss. They had a chance to make it a one-possession game. West Virginia last year. You don't want to keep letting those close games go the other way. So you hope they close it out and build that confidence, because I really think they could build some momentum. And the way the Big 12 set up, I mean, it kind of feels like we'll be playing a lot of games like that Colorado game that could be pretty tight. So I just, you know, you want to see them close it out so that they have that confidence and build on that. Offensively, you know, I still think we would like to see, you know, the running game wasn't as potent as I'd hoped it might be in Boulder. I think the talent's there. I think you're probably still just looking for that offensive line to continue to improve and gel, because I think we still see a lot of third and longer, you know, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, you know, 3rd and long. And I think this offense, I mean, like most offenses, if you can, you know, run the ball a little more effectively, I think you really open up the playbook for Sawyer if it's 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, and, you know, and building on that. And I mean, when you look at Bryson Washington and the stable of running backs they have, I think the talent's there. They've just got to put that together. And then getting off to faster starts. It's, you know, it's kind of taken a while. I mean, you know, you've taken some time in the prior games to get going, the fumbles against Air Force, the, you know, just really slow start against Utah, and, you know, and even a couple of 3-and-outs early against Colorado. You want to move the football and you want to put some points on the board early to make a statement so you don't press. Defensively, obviously the defense has been, I think, really solid. I think we still need to see more of what they're capable against good passers. I mean, I think they did a solid job against Shedeur Sanders. I know he had good passing numbers, I think around 340 yards, but I really thought they did a good job pressuring him, and they made him make some big time plays, which, you know, the challenge was he and Travis Hunter were the 2 best players on the field, and ultimately they did make some plays, but you at least forced him to make some difficult plays. You didn't make it easy for him. You know, they had to punt the football and give it back to you. And I think that we still need to see just how good they can be game in and game out, since they just weren't challenged in the passing game those first 3 games of the year. And then I'd like to see them force more turnovers. I think we're -2 on the turnover side of things. And again, if we expect all these Big 12 games to be close, forcing a turnover or 2 here or there per game, I think could go a long, long way. I think would have been huge in Boulder, obviously, if we'd been able to get one.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about the turnovers. There was a strip sack by Steve Linton at the end of the Colorado game on that final possession of regulation. He strips him, and the ball's on the Kyler Jordan was about a half a step away from recovering that fumble. And that's, I think that was the most frustrating part of that game to me, is that the defense did everything in the final 2 possessions that you would want them to do. They gave the offense a short field to kick a field goal, with two. They set up had 2 sacks to set up this short field, and then offensively or special teams struggle, miss a field goal, get the ball back to Colorado, and then sack them twice on that final possession, including a strip sack, and just made it absolutely difficult. But Shedeur comes out and makes great plays. So I'm with you. I'm like, he had 2 plays in that game, the Hail Mary and then the play right before halftime that accounted for 100 yards of his passing. You take away that, he throws for 240 yards. And I don't want to call those miracle plays, but in so many ways, they were miracle plays. Like, if you just get the guy down on the play, your defense has a chance to get a stop before half and don't give it that touchdown. Yeah. And then obviously that Hail Mary. It was, I think, for this team in general, it's just kind of like putting it all together at once. Having your defense get the stops, your special teams to kick the field goal, your offense to get a couple more first downs. I think they're capable of doing it all the way around. It's just, when does it all come together? I don't think I had that confidence last year, and really at the end of 22, that all of those things were going to come together at once. I have a lot more confidence now based on what we've seen that is a possibility, that you see that opportunity for it all to come together and play a full, complete game.
Yeah, I agree, because you think back to where we were last year at this time. The team that had just one win against Long Island, and the loss to Texas State, a disheartening game against Texas, and at one point, about way down against UCF. Obviously, came back to win that. This year, there's far more signs of encouragement. I was even noticing. So we only had 5 touchdown passes to wide receivers last year, all year long. Well, we've got 5 this year, and it feels like plenty more are coming. You look at the weapons we've got this year. The passing game is a lot more potent. The defense, again, take away the final minutes of that Colorado game, the defense has been solid for 240 minutes of football this year. They did exactly what you want them to do against Air Force and Tarleton. They really only gave up 1 prolonged drive to Utah when Cam Rising was in the game, and they made a first-round NFL draft pick have to work for his yards this past week. So, and one thing I'll mention too is, I think you used the word closing, and I think so you mentioned the post-game fan forum. Now, we did lose Elliot Coffey this year, but we've got Bryce Hager on there, but we still talk Coffey is for closers on the show. And I think about closing, I think that's what you want to see. It may take just a little bit more some of these games, because you mentioned not quite falling on that Steve Linton strip sack. I mean, even just, the Hail Mary play, Steve Linton was so close. And we had 8 sacks, 12 tackles for loss. And it's funny, in a game we had 8 sacks, felt like we left quite a few out there on the field. And I think, that in general, I believe that you want consistent pressure more than you want the sacks in general. But boy, in these games, you're going to have to finish some of those. So maybe just closing out some of those little things, that extra little bit of effort or half step, could be the difference in a win and a loss.
Yeah. I don't know how many missed tackles that they had on Shedeur specifically. But in the first half, it was nuts. I mean, and truly, I believe they only had 1 sack in the first half, but they were in the backfield all of the time. And then they hit 7 in the second. They finished those in the second half, which was great to see. You just hope that continues. So let's move to BYU. Man, what a crazy game that they just had against Kansas State. And they were down 6-3 at home against Kansas State. And within about, I don't know how many minutes, 6 minutes roughly, it went from of gameplay 6-3 to 31-6 in their favor, 28 points, and they only ran 4 offensive plays. 4 in that. BYU did it in that stretch. Now they're 4-0, ranked number 22. I mean, so like talk about the complete opposite of what Baylor just went through. There's BYU beating Kansas State in a game no one thought they were going to win. Now they're 4-0, ranked number 22. And I mean, this is kind of a battle of who can get back to the middle ground, who can not be too emotional, or who can not be too down in this game. But when you've looked at BYU preparing for this game, what do you see from them? Obviously, they're older, they're physical, the typical DNA of a BYU team. But what stands out to you the most about this game?
It's funny. On Saturday night and Sunday morning, I was in a discouraged headspace. We just lost this tough game to Colorado, and you see what BYU had done to Kansas State, and they're a good team. They're a much improved team. I mean, I think they brought a lot of guys back, and that's the kind of improvement you want to see if you're a fan of a college program. And it's not going to be an easy game. I do feel encouraged that it's a solid matchup for us. I think when you look inside that Kansas State box, they get their box score against Kansas State. They're good, but they had a 90-yard punt return and an interception return, and that great stat you just gave. Scoring I think 25 points, running 4 offensive plays. That's not going to happen every game. That's that's a confluence of factors coming together. And I think Baylor can play right there with them and play better than them for 60 minutes if they protect the football. And if they are able to hopefully get off to a good start. I think you look at BYU, they've got a good defense. Their defense is number 2 in the Big 12 and I think top 20 in the nation. And they've got some guys there at every level. So I think that's going to be a challenge. How can Sawyer Robertson and Jake Spavital, how can they combine to try to dissect that? But they're also not a defense that just scares you to think, oh boy, what's going to be there today, like maybe Utah a couple weeks ago. And they have a solid offense, but this isn't quite like a couple of years ago when you've got Puka Nacua and Tyler Algier and others. They've got some solid players, but I don't think they have the studs maybe they've had in the past. And I think it's an opportunity for Baylor's defense to make a statement against them. Jake Retzloff has had a good year, but I don't think anyone's saying in general he's going to give you most of the kind of games that we saw last week against Shedeur Sanders. We faced maybe the top quarterback in the Big 12 last week and played well against him. So they should have a lot of confidence going up that they could, rattle Retzloff, get some pressure on him and try to, get him playing behind the sticks or making some turnover type plays.
Yeah, I've watched quite a bit of BYU, and the personnel that they have offensively is not the same. Like you just mentioned, like I think running back is a big concern for them. They started a freshman last week. I've had some guys out. Chase Roberts, we know about Chase Roberts from a couple of years ago when Baylor went to BYU. He had a huge game, kind of his emergence at BYU after Puka Nacua left, and I just don't see the personnel-wise that just scares you. And that's from one end of the spectrum against Colorado where they had guys running at receiver that you're worried about chasing all over the field with Shedeur. I'm anxious to see this Baylor defense in this setting. I think BYU wants to be balanced where Colorado didn't necessarily care about being balanced. They're going to be more like Utah. And not that Utah ultimately was the factor they would have been with Cam Rising throughout the entire season, but we saw what Utah did against Oklahoma State just last weekend with the same Isaac Wilson. So, it's a very interesting matchup of, I would say, the strengths of both teams or the defense. So it's which offense can find enough, and then it might be a swing play on special teams, a blocked punt or a punt return or kick return. Both teams have shown the capability of doing that. One interesting fact that I've been listening to quite a bit of BYU podcasts and radio shows, and BYU is 0-10 in day games in their last 10 games. And they've talked about, playing away from the West Coast or playing away from the Mountain Time Zone and playing early games. So this is truly a 10 a.m. kick for BYU. Yeah. So getting these early games where they thrive in late home games. So evening home games like we saw against Kansas State where the fans are in it and it's kind of sets up. They're used to playing those, but now they're playing an early game in Waco. I don't think it's going to be too hot on Saturday, not comparatively, but it's probably going to be a little bit warmer than what they're used to. And you just hope that the fans can show up and make it a little bit rowdy, but it's an interesting dynamic. And usually you pass that stuff off and you say, well, that's just kind of a coincidence. But if you listen to the BYU personalities talk about it, there's something to it, and they're concerned about that particularly in this game. And not necessarily playing away from home, but I think there's just been such a stark difference between their home games at night and their away games during the day that they're concerned about it and trying to get up and started for this game.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I've heard that too. So we actually interviewed Greg Wrubell, their play-by-play announcer, for the tailgate show on Saturday, and he mentioned that as well. And you can tell this is kind of turned a corner in their fan base, maybe over the into last year into this year, where I think you're right. Sometimes you could just be like, oh, that's a coincidence. But all of a sudden, when it keeps on happening, and that's now 10-day games in a row that they've lost, it can get in your head. And obviously people are talking about it and their players have ears. And I know, Coach Taki, they're going to try to tune all that out and say it's just another game. It doesn't matter what time you kick off. But perhaps it does. And if that's a slight advantage for Baylor, absolutely, let's take it and make them think about that for another week. But another reason I think would be big for Baylor to get off to a quick start, which that haven't really done this year. Get off to a quick start, make BYU play from behind, and maybe the fact that they're 0-10 in day games takes on a little added weight if say we're up 17-3 or 21-7 in the second quarter because we started well and they're like, oh man, here we go again. I know those little factors that can make a difference. And also likewise, I hope our fans really bring it and kind of shake that loss off last week. I thought the Air Force environment a couple weeks ago was really a good environment, and that would bode well for us if we could replicate that.
Yeah, the gold out for this weekend. The team will be wearing the gold uniforms again. The fans are encouraged to wear the gold. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of BYU fans that were a couple of years ago when they traveled down, or in 2021. I'm sure there'll be quite a few. Always fun to see them. But Derek, man, I really appreciate your time today and visiting with us. And I hope we can do this again. My plan will be to have you back on more often. It's been a great conversation, and you bring a great perspective, obviously being in the press box every single week and then your post-game show as well. And I really do appreciate you hopping on with us today.
Well, thanks, Colt. I appreciate that. I'd always love to jump on. I enjoy listening to you and Grayson. It's part of my drive into work routine. So I enjoy that, and always glad to jump on with you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Eric. Have a good one. I am now joined by Baylor special team coach Mark Scott. Coach, really appreciate you taking the time to visit with us today. Great start to the season for your unit. And I think that's where I want to go straight into this. Right now, Baylor, there's all the world of advanced analytics and everything to measure these units by offensive, defensively, and obviously special teams. Right now, FEI is one of the main components, has your unit currently ranked number 1 in the country. I don't know if you keep up with that or if you just have your own measurements, but how do you go about assessing what your teams are doing on the field?
There are different measurements, obviously, based on each unit. For instance, kickoff return, we haven't gotten a lot of opportunities. Just with different touchbacks and alternative kicks that we faced this year was good, and that was one of the many emphases going into last week against Colorado, is we had to get kickoff return started. Guys did an unbelievable job just in terms of practice throughout the week and understanding the scheme and ready for some of the challenges that they presented. It's really different because there have been games where statistically we come out and if you just read the box score, it looks like we had a really, really good day. But what I told the guys after this past week is we did a lot of good things, and we've done a lot of good things up to through 4 weeks. But the most exciting thing is I don't think we've played our best ball yet. The buy-in has been great. The effort has been great. We could clean up little details in terms of technique always. But again, I'm pleased with where we're at. But the thing that has me excited is that I think our best ball, special teams, offense, defense, across the board is still ahead of us.
Yeah. So that was going to be one of my last questions for you. But how can this team, your specifically special teams, improve? Like, what's the next step? Because obviously you've made plenty of impact plays and you've made great coverages, but like, where is that next step, if there is another step like you're saying there is?
We're only a third of the way through the season. Told some of the guys earlier this morning, the stats and where they're at. I don't want them looking at those stats and becoming obsessed with those stats. Our guys just need to work on getting better each and every day, and improving on some of the things that we need to be more consistent with. But it's consistency. Schemes are going to change from week to week based on opponents and what they present. We've got to have the same focus and the same work ethic and the same drive each and every day, just to have that consistency over the entire regular season. Again, we've done some really good things up to this point, but we can't be satisfied and relax. We've got to have the same attention to detail, the same effort, and same focus all the way throughout.
Yeah. So one guy I want to ask you about, and Josh goes undervalued in so many ways, offensively, obviously on special teams, but on 21 career punt returns, which some of those were last year, he's averaged 16.9 yards per return, and that number is up to 19.3 this season. You just said don't worry about the statistics, but Josh has done, to me, a phenomenal job, typically making the first guy miss and getting upfield pretty quick. He doesn't have the score yet, but man, what makes Josh so special as a punt returner? Even though you might look at him and he doesn't look like a punt returner most of the time to most people.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because last year I was on the other end, of an opposing team scouting Josh.
Mm-hmm.
It just the more time, looking back last year, the more time he's been back there and the more opportunities he had, you could just tell how much more comfortable he got throughout the course of the year and how much more confident he got throughout the course of the year. And the fact that he is as big of a body as he is, it allows him to get certain returns started that a lot of guys wouldn't be able to. The first return last week against Colorado, he broke 2 tackles right off the bat. And again, we had a couple guys that we can improve our technique and try and get that thing started. But he sets up blocks really, really well. He's got good vision. He helps the other 10 guys out there. And again, the more success that he has, the more confident he is. And the more success that we have as a unit, the more confident that the other 10 guys become, just in terms of trusting the technique and trusting that Josh is going to make the right decision back there. He's a really, really good communicator, which helps because we faced a little bit of this already, but teams are going to continue to do it. They're going to try and spray the ball all over the place to keep it away from them.
Kind of the opposite side of that, not the opposite, but on kickoff returns, Jamal Bell is a guy that was brought in a lot of ways specifically for returning kicks. He hasn't had a lot of opportunities other than end of half or beginning of halves or beginning of games. But he kind of showed why he was brought in, and his top end speed is elite. Between he and Josh, and I wanted you to talk on Jamal a little bit specifically too, but how does that affect a coach or a special teams coach, a head coach, whoever, knowing that there's an opportunity for big plays no matter where we kick it, and they have the game plan around for those things?
No doubt. Well, and again, as we've been working each and every week, and even more so this week. The minute and we saw it in the Colorado game, the minute you hit a big one, teams aren't going to continue to give you those opportunities. So we've got to be ready for sky kicks. We've got to be ready for squib kicks. We got to be ready for surprise onside. We've got to be ready for everything. So we get our guys as many alternative and surprise kicks as we possibly can. And then again, we're going to have checks and rules and blocking assignments for all of those things. But again, part of the reason why I was so excited when I got the opportunity to come to Baylor. And at this point, I didn't even know about Jamal Bell at this point in time. But Richard Reese, Josh Cameron, Jamal Bell. I mean, we have got a lot of guys that we can put back there and that can make explosive plays in the return game. Again, I got to give my hats off to the other 10 guys out there on Colorado. Sure. I'm not. There aren't many 101-yard kickoff returns where the returner doesn't get touched. So it was a great job in terms of getting behind the ball and setting the track by Jamal. And again, you have a little bit of success, and that kickoff return was one of our main emphases last week to try and get it going. We had the right guys in the right spots, and they did a phenomenal job of clearing the way for Jamal.
Yeah, that was really cool to see. I mean, he exploded, and obviously he's fast enough. He's going to hit that hole. And as soon as he broke through that last block, I think it was Michael Allen, is that right, who had that last still block? And he was, he was gone. So you set it up for him, and he has a great opportunity to break it. Obviously this year you've had a block punt, now a kickoff return. You've had several returns by Josh. Is there one particular play on special teams that gets you going more than any other one?
Anytime you can flip the field, obviously anytime you can score on special teams. I mean, that is a huge momentum play. It's not always great. It's not always great for some of the defensive guys because they got to go right back out there. But there is something about blocking a punt that kind of they don't happen quite as often. So when you finally get home, and we've had a couple opportunities where we've been close this year, but to get one early on is good. And again, that. I can't tell you how many times that we've worked through fall camp and the week leading up to our first opponent. We probably what we call our block party drill, where we're blocking punts from all different angles, front side, back side. We probably worked it 5, 6, 7, 8 times throughout fall camp. just because, and again, what that does, if there's the threat or teams are worried about you rushing, then that's going to help open things up for Josh in the return game. I've told our guys, and we've been, as a staff, been preaching it since the spring. You can't just be good in one. When it comes to punt return, you can't just be good in one phase of it. You've got to be to maximize that unit. You've got to be good in both, in terms of pressuring punts and affecting punters, and then obviously in the return game. So that one again, had an opportunity to scoop and score that one. We didn't get that done, but we've been working and drilling that too. So if that opportunity comes up again, I hope we can cash in on that.
Yeah. So final question. I know BYU had a crazy punt return in that game against Kansas State, where even their coach Taki said that was a kind of a mistake that turned into a positive, but BYU presents their own challenges on special teams. What do you see from their unit that you're going to have to be most focused on this weekend?
I mean, you look at them top to bottom. They've got an experienced kicker who's really accurate and has a really strong leg in terms of kickoff. Their kickoff team. I mean, I don't know that they've given up an explosive return. I think maybe one 30-plus yard return dating back to last season. Mm-hmm. They've got a lot of size, a lot of speed, a lot of physicality. And then you look at their punt wise, they've got two different punters. They can spray it all over the place. They've great speed on the outside at gunners. And then you look at their return units. They've returned a punt and a kickoff this year. Had several explosive returns last year. So their returners are as dangerous as we've seen. And talked about it on Sunday night with the staff. Just trying to giving an overview, and we've talked about it every day this week. I mean, this is going to be our biggest challenge yet, just in terms of total special teams units. Baylor's really, really good, and they're really good in every phase. They give great effort. They're very, very physical, and they've got speed to match. So, it's not obviously anytime they've got dangerous returners and they've scored in both phases. That's the thing that really jumps out. But just they're coached really well. They play really, really hard. They're big. They're physical. They're fast. So I mean, again, we've had to go back and challenge our guys and show them the tape and show them the film and try and make matchups and switch some things around. But this is going to definitely be our biggest challenge of this season from a special team standpoint.
Well, it makes it every aspect of the game that much more entertaining when you're considering special teams. So, Coach, really appreciate your time today. Good luck this weekend against BYU, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Coach. All right, Baylor family, that's going to do it for today's episode of Inside Baylor Sports, the official daily podcast of Baylor Athletics. I'm Colt Barber. Have a great game weekend, and Sic 'em Bears.